From the Cactus, KCTS FM Phoenix, this is Greenwood Company. Hello everybody, I'm Jamison Greenwood, and I've got a great show planned for you tonight. We're going to hear about a time in my school years when there was a bust of Julius Caesar. I've also got some great poems to share with you all today. We'll have to take a couple breaks for some annoying commercials, but hopefully that won't be too torturous. But I'm just so glad that you all were able to join me for the first episode of my new podcast. I just love spending time with all of you and sharing my stories and poems, and I know that we're going to have a great time tonight and in the coming weeks. So to get started, I thought I'd share my first little poem, which I think is one that really puts everything in perspective. We'll get to that weird story of Julius Caesar in a little bit, but this is a poem titled Best Days. 'Tis a part of the human condition to assume our best days are behind. Though the past is now gone, it brings comfort. Future worries envelop our minds. We think of the friends who have drifted, our grandparents loved but now dead, the children we are but no longer, thoughts that burden and crowd in our head. Of the burden of needing good money to buy gasoline, shelter, and food, how the prices go higher and higher, how good money seems less and less good. We think of how precious our time is, how little like cash we possess, how our goals will take more to accomplish, so we give up, which leaves us depressed. We rise up for work every morning. We must work to make money to live. Yet when one thinks there's nothing to live for, what a sense of great waste work can give. But our lives aren't like fictional stories, with a rise, a clear peak, and a fall. Like the troughs and the crests in the ocean, our lives can rise after they fall. 'Tis a part of the human condition to assume our best days are behind, but the future holds many a blessing. To assume this is false is but blind. Support for Greenwood and Company and the Cactus, KCTS, comes from the St. Petersburg Coffee and Tea Company of Hannibal, Missouri, manufacturers and distributors of Princeton Popper microwave popcorn and other low-quality, high-cost food, beverage, personal hygiene, and home cleaning products. Additional funding is provided by the Save the Floppy Disks Foundation, the Shag Carpet Preservation Fund, and the Folding Chair Charitable Trusts. Well, just because we look forward to the future doesn't mean we can't enjoy the past, and honestly, sometimes when we need a good laugh, the best place to look is in the past, like in this story that I call Caesar's Bust. Every January at our school, the sixth graders had a Greek and Roman day, where each class would represent a famous figure or politician from ancient Greece or Rome. All the students wore togas, and each of the teachers of the lower grades would pause their classes to show them the sixth graders parading around, proclaiming the likes of "Hail Caesar, long live Rome," and 2, 4, 6, 8, we love Alexander the Great. As a poet, the butchered syllables of that last chant still make me cringe. The parade culminated on the north basketball court, where the music teacher, Mrs. Bostich, led the students in traditional Greek dances that involved a careful set of 10 steps with the circles of students reversing every 5 steps. If there had been a Christmas tree in the middle of the circle, it could have been a more sophisticated version of the Danish tradition of dancing around the tree on Christmas Eve. However, the circles of sixth graders stood empty, and the dances were probably odes to some obscure Greek god whose only purpose in visiting Earth was to screw human women, then turn them into cockroaches when they sued for child support payments. This sort of thing isn't taught about in sixth grade, who like to teach us that the Greeks were trailblazers in the worlds of athletics, intellect, and democracy, but history has shown they were also very horny people with little regard for basic human decency. But I suppose they get some forgiveness for inventing the euro. Even though Mrs. Hicks taught Arizona history in accordance with 4th grade curriculum, she did not hide her passion for world history. In the back of her classroom hung posters depicting the Parthenon, the Great Wall of China, and Big Ben. On the shelf beneath were framed copies of the various classes she had taught over the years. Flanking the centerpiece, a charcoal-colored bust of Julius Caesar, with gold-painted accents on the armor he wore. I went to school during the pioneer days before the advent of digital projectors linked to the teachers' laptops. The only computers the school offered were these ancient Hewlett-Packard desktops that used a state-of-the-art operating system called Windows XP. although some of the programs, like the library's cataloging system, required something called Microsoft DOS, which I'm not going to bother explaining to you because I have no idea what it is myself. We were spared inkwells, chalkboards, and football games with leather helmets, but forced to endure the primitive technology of overhead projectors, and when discussing geography, a series of roll-up maps mounted to the wall. As part of a lesson on the conquistadors, Mrs. Hicks walked over to her roll-up map, which happened to be bolted to the wall above the bookshelf where Caesar's bust stood. Mrs. Hicks was only about 5'4" tall, and after climbing a small stool, she pulled down a map of Europe. "Now," Mrs. Hicks began, "Spain is located in the southwest part of Europe, just above Morocco and As soon as she'd let go of the map and turned around to speak to us, the map slid back into the roll, like a garage door refusing to close. "Hang on, guys." Mrs. Hicks retrieved her stool and tried pulling the map down again, but it wouldn't stick. And this time, the right side of it vibrated a bit from the impact of the rising map, loosening a bolt that held it to the brick wall. She went to one of the supply cabinets and retrieved some Velcro so she could keep the map in place just above and behind Caesar. None of my other classmates noticed, but this particular action triggered my concern. Having a sister 8 years younger than me, I was very safety conscious, looking out for and trying to prevent potential hazards. I would sometimes scold my own grandmother for leaving the toilet lid up, as I wanted to ensure Macy didn't drown. However, I did not wish to get in trouble for insubordination, so I just waited while Mrs. Hicks explained the locations of the Spaniards and how they navigated their way to Arizona. She then wanted to switch to a map of the United States to show us where the Spaniards invaded Florida, but because she'd forgotten about the Velcro, this map kept retracting. When it started to go up, she grabbed hold of it and condensed her description of the Caribbean before letting the map go, then detaching the Velcro from behind Caesar's head, letting the map rise to the top. This time, the force caused the mounting bolt to fall out of the brick, barely missing the black and white photo of the class she taught in 1979. I ate lunch later that day with my two best friends, Theo and Taylor, and discovered that Taylor, a girl who aspired to be a Disney Imagineer, shared my concerns. "Can't she get the custodian in to fix that?" Taylor asked. "Well," I said, "there's only one custodian, and it's got to be a lot on him to do work in every classroom." Theo, the son of our church organist, chimed in. "Could we ask the sexton to fix it?" Taylor shook her head. I thought Theo was well-meaning, but explained Mrs. Hicks would probably get in trouble because he's not employed by the school district. "Man, it seems like the whole reason we have schools is so teachers can punish students and the district can punish teachers," Theo said. "Well, we have to remember the separation of church and state," Taylor added. "But the sexton would just be replacing the map," said Theo. "It's not like he's selling Bibles to the school or consecrating communion wine in the cafeteria. He's just a repairman that works at the church." This discussion went on some time, as did a span where Mrs. Hicks was able to avoid using the maps. It was not that hard considering our focus for 4th grade was Arizona history, but if the need came to use a map of a foreign land, like the east coast of the United States, she found clear sheets to display on the overhead projector. Well, before we continue with the story of Caesar's bust, we have to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll continue with the story and a whole lot more. You're listening to Greenwood and Company on KCTS.
Hi, I'm Wilfred Brimley, and I have continuous diarrhea. I've also got type 2 adult onset diabetes. Liberty Medical takes care of my diabetes testing supplies, but when it comes to continuous diarrhea, there ain't no cure. But life's been easier with Encrocia, a once-daily medicine. It won't stop my diarrhea, but it keeps it under control just enough that I keep my friends, and I still sleep in the same bed with my wife.
Encrocia may interfere with drugs used to manage diabetes and other chronic health issues. Other conditions such as eczema and sudden toe disintegration may occur while taking Encrocia. Taking Encrocia alone or with some other medicines may result in loss of health insurance coverage. This product is known to cause athlete's foot in the state of Arizona. Other risks include death and zombification in rare cases. If you notice any of these, call your doctor right away and ask him to double your dose.
With Encrocia, continuous diarrhea agrees to my terms.
Ask your doctor if Encrocia is right for you. And welcome back. You are listening to Greenwood Company on the Cactus, KCTS. And now we will continue with our story of Julius Caesar's bust. When we returned from Christmas break, everyone lamented the end of the holiday season, but seemed to cheer up when reminded that Greek and Roman Day would be held at the end of the month. Most of the kids in the lower grades couldn't wait to participate in Greek and Roman one day, but as my next-door neighbor and first love Chloe Bradbury explained, it wasn't a bed of roses. They did bring gyros for lunch, but each student was required to present a speech with an accompanying slideshow on a Greek deity or thinker, and their quarterly grade would be docked 1 letter if they did not wear a toga. Other than teaching that even jerks existed in ancient Greece, or the very essence of the word draconian, I still can't discern any logical or ethical explanation for these guidelines. Mrs. Hicks developed a cold on Greek and Roman Day, so we were assigned a substitute teacher, Mrs. Proctor. Despite her name, Mrs. Proctor was a kindly soul with graying hair and glasses. She had taught when the school was first built, and her final year before retiring was when Theo, Taylor, and I were in kindergarten. However, she had a habit of getting overly excited and going off on tangents, like the time she subbed for us in 2nd grade and discussed how her pet rabbit decimated her mother's rutabaga patch when she was supposed to be reading us the tale of Peter Rabbit. I don't think Mrs. Proctor was any older than my Grammy Benson, but looking back it's evident to me that she was probably in the early throes of vascular dementia. Mrs. Proctor, of course, remembered Greek and Roman Day, but she strangely insisted we join the parade, following behind Sparta, represented by Mr. Greenway's class. The other classes stared in question of why a non-6th grade class was participating. However, Mrs. Proctor had enough sense to stop us short of circling up on the basketball court to join the Greek dances. She remembered the steps, but did not realize she was saying them out loud, and while the music was loud enough to cover it up, to the side where she was standing, we could hear a faint, gravelly voice whispering, "Right together, right, left together, left pivot, right together, right, left together, left pivot." When the dances ended, Mrs. Proctor escorted us back to Mrs. Hicks' room, and though she was supposed to begin a lesson on Rose Mofford, our state's first female governor, she had other plans. "Do any of you know where Greece is on the map?" asked Mrs. Proctor while walking to the back of the room by the bookshelves with Julius Caesar's bust. Taylor, Theo, and I exchanged glances of panic. "I'll pull the map down and show you," she smiled. Upon grabbing the string to pull the map, it refused to come down. "This darn thing," Mrs. Proctor complained. She pulled harder, but rather than the map of Europe sliding downward, the entire roll dropped at a diagonal and whacked Caesar's head. Somehow the head came off in one piece, flew across the room like a soccer ball headed for the winning goal, but rather than hitting a net, bouncing back and landing in the grass behind the goalposts, Caesar's head hit the brick wall. It then broke into several pieces, which fell onto the coarse commercial-grade carpet, some of them breaking into smaller pieces. Mrs. Proctor's only comment on the situation was, "Julius Caesar was stabbed, not beheaded." After school, the custodian came and cleaned the shattered remains of the Caesar's head, then re-secured the maps with concrete anchors so they wouldn't fall again. Mrs. Proctor showed no remorse in the initial aftermath, but was kind enough to send Mrs. Hicks a gift basket for breaking her precious bust. For about 3 months the headless bust remained on the bookcase, Mrs. Hicks having no time between lessons, testing, and grading to even think about disposing of it, until one day it simply vanished. Mrs. Hicks never knew what happened to it, and none of us students did either. Until one day, I was out walking and saw a new bouquet of flowers in front of a Mediterranean-style ranch house I had been passing for years. They were a beautiful set of white carnations, but their vase seemed an odd choice. It looked like an ordinary black vase from a distance, but closer examination showed it looked like a torso, clad in charcoal Roman armor with gold accents. Later I called up Theo and Taylor, and we walked by it. They confirmed it looked the same to them. Thus, the legend of Headless Caesar lives on. Hello, I'm Cactus Bill Jacobs of the Montgomery McDougal Law Group. If you've been injured in a car, motorcycle, or RV accident, or if you took a medication to treat a chronic disease and got 2 fatal diseases because of it, we may be entitled to substantial financial compensation. At Montgomery McDougal, we're dedicated to taking advantage of your misfortunes when they're worth the thousands of dollars in fees we can win on your case. And even when we lose, we win. Your money. Probably shouldn't have said that. Call Cactus Bill Jacobs on the Montgomery McDougal Law Group, 1-877-273-9968. That's 1-87-SCREWYOU. Call now. You're listening to Greenwood Company on the Cactus, KCTS FM Phoenix. This segment is brought to you by the Used Car Salesman Plaid Sport Coat Foundation and the Society for Cats with Mathematics Test Anxiety. The past and the future are sort of the yin and yang that help us keep the present in perspective. And whenever I think of yin and yang, I think of the symbols yin and yang, which are black and white. And anything that's black and white makes me think of salt and pepper, the 2 spices, and reminds me of our closing poem, which I call Salt and Pepper Lids. Upon a table in a greasy spoon, beneath the brightness of the snowy moon, reflections show and seem to write a letter upon the lids of jars of salt and pepper. A letter to the folks that dined upon the seats at this here table dusk to dawn. The boy and girl who went on their first date before they knew their date was a mistake. The grandma with her grandkids for the night, sharing chocolate milkshakes in delight. The man who drove his truck down into Globe, who stopped first for his egg and bacon load. The single mother waitress highly stressed. The minister who prayed she might be blessed. Delicious pies of apple, pumpkin, cherry, and coffee served which always makes one merry. The lids upon these jars have seen a lot. It's remarkable they hardly even rot. Through times of joy and times of great despair, the salt and pepper shakers will be there. That brings an end to this week's Greenwood Company. Our show was created and hosted by yours truly and was written by him along with James Salison and Minnesota Martinez. The engineer is Ivan Crosby. Jonas Andrews answers the phones even though we don't take calls on this program. The theme was composed by Martin Landstrom, and our costumes are provided by Grandma's Garage Thrift Shop. All the characters, settings, and situations depicted in this program, along with all advertised products, are entirely fictional, and any similarities to products, events, or persons, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. Also, KCTS is not an actual radio station. Just a reminder to please be careful if you are going out on the 101, the 17, or Route 66 tonight. I'm Jamison Greenwood, and until we meet again, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay young at heart. Good night. This is KCTS FM Phoenix. Stay tuned for Lacking in Substance.